10 pages, right? So you also have to, when you read this, right, you also have to analyze why certain words are used. Okay? So that to me is a great definition of health. It's not just absence of symptoms. It's actually the whole physiological process being in balance. Now as an engineer, what got me excited is, now we have the definition of health, how to measure it quantifiably and then say that I'm healthy, right? Okay, hope the screen comes back. So what we have been looking at is, we've been building tools, right, powered by AI, so that we can measure all these parameters and assess objectively, not subjectively, if a person is healthy. So a lot of people, ask me, how can I live longer, right? I think longevity, it's a big market now, has two parts. One is living longer. We have been living longer in the last 100 years. Average life expectancy has increased. But are we living healthier, right? Living longer is not the issue, right? You can sit in an ICU bed and, stay for a couple of years, no problem. But is that the life, right? So the definition of, swastha is not really understood, right? So it actually doesn't mean living longer. It's living healthier and longer. I think that's what we have to look at. So if you have to look at longevity, your genes, right, only contribute 15%. The rest we call epigenetics, they contribute 85%. So there is a hope for all, irrespective of what the genes you got, you can do this epigenetic modulation, right? I'll talk about how Ayurveda helps in doing epigenetic modulation so that you can live longer and healthier. So in modern medicine, I want to contrast a little bit because we're going to talk about AI in drug discovery. These concepts are very important. Typically modern medicine, one drug, one active pharmaceutical ingredient, typically one target, right? It goes in targets, one pathway, okay? So that's why if you look at it, right, you see this is published in Science, Nature magazine. For every, these are top 10 selling drugs. For every person the drug helps, do you see more red picture or do you see more blue picture? Blue picture is the drug is helping somebody. Red picture, same drug, not helping not helping people. Do you see more blue or red? Right. So that means we've got the whole healthcare wrong. Right? Even the medicines that we are inventing, they're not actually helping people. Right? Same thing, how many of you heard of Humira? It's the most lucrative drug which actually reduces the inflammation TNF-alpha pathway, right, in the body. All autoimmune diseases, people give this drug to suppress the immunity. Right? But you see, long-term effects. If your immunity is suppressed, right, you can get all kinds of side effects. Now the biggest craze is GLP-1 agonists, right, for weight loss. Everywhere you hear a podcast, you will hear GLP-1 agonist. What they do, they actually activate something called the satiety pathway, and then people will lose weight because you don't feel hungry, right? So again, if you take the drug, your weight will decrease, not a significant 15%, right? That 15% you can actually decrease by walking up and down, your college, some friend gate to here, not spending $1,000 on this expensive drug, right? But some people don't want to do that, so you have to take this $1,000 drug, right? So nevertheless, when you stop the drug, you see your weight comes back up, only 15%, right? So these are the limitations of single drug therapies, and I'll talk about what is the beauty of Ayurveda drugs. So if you can keep people healthy for 1 year, you can actually save $38 trillion. This is a study done in US. So that's why, there is a paradigm called personalized medicine. We'll take all the data from wearables, blood markers, etc., and we make people healthy. There is a prize that is announced, right, to make people healthier by 5 years using the best of modern technology. And we're also participating in that prize. So what the unique perspective that we are bringing in, you have all the markers, modern markers, whether it's from digital markers from your wearables, from your blood reports, etc. But you take the advantage of Ayurveda markers, right? Because Ayurveda is very personalized. And then you can suggest personalized recommendations. So for those of you who are interested to understand the modern, right, what is happening in modern medicine, you can look at some of these books which talk about how medicine is personalized and deeper instead of just curing symptoms. So there are a lot of books that are written. When you actually read that book, you will find a lot of similarities with what is talked in Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, etc. So what is the opportunity? The opportunity that you as Ayurveda doctors have, right, is high personalization of anything, whether it is diet, supplements, interventions, as per your own unique body. So to me, the Prakriti classification, right, where you understand your baseline. If you don't understand your baseline, you don't know what is, changed, what is the imbalance, right? So if you actually understand your baseline, then you can treat people better and make sure that, right, the future of medicine is no medicine. Ensure that people don't get diseases, they don't have to take medicine. So that's why we look at it, right, this is the triangle. So what is the advantage if you know Prakriti? I talk to a lot of Ayurveda doctors. Some Ayurveda doctors use Prakriti in this practice. Some Ayurveda doctors don't actually do Prakriti assessment. In fact, when I was in IIT Jodhpur, we called 10 Ayurveda doctors. We had our mentor. We asked them, you ask whatever questions you want and assess his Prakriti. 10 people came with 10 different answers. Completely different. If the basics of Ayurveda is understanding Prakriti, and if you are not standardizing or trained in that, then I think we have a problem, right? So that's why, we are bringing in AI tools to make it more objective. So once you know your Prakriti, right, there are a lot of advantages, right? What is the advantage of knowing Prakriti? Can any student tell? Why do you need to know a person's Prakriti? Healthy people, forget about deceased. What is the advantage? Yes? Okay. Anybody else? Maybe you have to talk a little bit louder. Okay. So if you know your Prakriti, you see this triangle, right? So this triangle tells you how far you are away from the disease predisposition. If you cross, if the triangle is elongated to one direction, that means that particular dosha is more higher. That doesn't mean that you have disease, but your propensity to get disease. So we call it disease predisposition. If it's a vata dominant person, we say these are the diseases they can potentially get. If it's a kapha, they can get metabolic disorders. If they're pitta, they can get gastric disorders, right? So once you know the Prakriti, you can actually tell how balanced they are in their constitution. If you are balanced, okay, you can go eat pizza, probably you're okay for 1 year. But if you are imbalanced, then if your diet and other things are not conforming, then you will get imbalance easily, right? So the concept of treating a person is to bring back the doshas to similar level, right? So this is the debate, I think you probably know better. Does samadosha mean all doshas equal, or samadosha mean you bring back to your Prakriti? Different Ayurveda doctors told me different things. I think we can have a discussion and debate. What does actually samadosha mean? Does it mean all the three doshas are equal, or you bring back to their Prakriti state? Okay. So what we are looking at is combining Ayurveda principles. Then you have so many wearable devices, you have phones, right? You have other markers, and use AI tools to deliver personalization. Whether it is personalized diet, personalized supplements, personalized yoga and meditation. Okay. So I mentioned, right, we had a saying, in God we trust, everybody else must bring data. So this is the first paper in the whole world showing what happens to inflammation in the body when you give a personalized Ayurveda treatment. So treatment is not standardized, because in Ayurveda you cannot standardize a treatment, that's against. So we call it N is equal to 1 medicine. You become your own baseline and then you look at what happens after the treatment and you see if I have improved or not. So this paper is available in our website. It's under currently peer review. So you can see that we have measured both pro-inflammatory markers and anti-inflammatory markers. And the results are that irrespective of the disease, the pro-inflammatory markers are decreasing and certain anti-inflammatory markers are increasing, which is what you want to observe. So total 500 subjects we have done, and we have taken symptoms, and obviously because of the limited budget we could only do blood markers for 60 patients. So I give some examples of the results. Right? So control group, that means a healthy individual. You see most of the inflammatory markers are low. Right? And in a diseased person before treatment, these are diabetic patients, you can see how the inflammatory markers jump 2 to 3 fold. Then after just 2 to 3 months treatment, you can see the inflammatory markers decreased. Same thing in gastro patients. So then we also looked what happens to the dependency of decrease depending on the length of the treatment. See, in Ayurveda we typically take the medicine at least for 3 months, right, to see the effects. In modern medicine, right, since you're just looking at an aspect of symptom alleviation, you can get faster results. But if you want to really fundamentally cure the disease, you have to take for longer time. So as you can see here, 2 months treatment versus 3 months treatment, there is significant difference in the outcomes. So that's why we always tell, continue your Ayurveda treatment for a certain time as prescribed by the doctor for you to see the results. You have to have a little bit patience, right? We have abused our bodies and increased inflammation over the last 10-20 years. You have to wait at least 3 months to see clear results. Okay, so we already talked about Prakriti. Right? We talked about disease predisposition. We also, if you know the Prakriti, you can also give the food recommendations. Right? There are whole field of Ayurveda dietetics. Depending on the Prakriti, you can tailor the food. Right? If you eat the food as per your Prakriti, you will maintain your health. Which I didn't do after coming back from US. I stopped eating breakfast, eat a lot of spicy food. I'm a Vata Pitta personality, so it got aggravated. So I wish somebody told me earlier, you're a Pitta personality, decrease all this. Okay, now the question is, do we have scientific evidence for understanding Prakriti in a modern perspective? I'll give some of the studies. So since all of you are Ayurveda doctors, right? Please start thinking about how we can explain doshas in modern understanding. Right? So when you go to a modern doctor, they have certain symptoms, they have certain blood markers, right? And then you can see the changes in the blood markers as you get treatment. Now, how do we explain and understand doshas? Right? I give a simple analogy. If you look at gravitational theory, I think all of you studied gravitational theory. So Newton has invented the theory of gravitation, and he told that the force is proportional to mass, but there is a factor called gravitational constant. So that's a theory. If you ask Newton, tell me what is the origin of the gravitation, he doesn't know the answer. Right? He just says it is there. So then Einstein came and told that gravitation, right, is nothing but space-time curvature. Then the question became, how does space-time curvature happen? Then people invented something called string theories. Strings are nothing but small, energy centers. When they oscillate, they appear as mass. Okay? So it took, the moral is, it took some time to understand and explain the theory of gravitation. It took 200, 300 years to understand and explain in a little bit modern terms. So I think the same thing has to happen in Ayurveda. I'm not telling that everything can be explained, but at least certain things can be explained because you are seeing the real effects in people. It's not philosophy, right? When you treat a patient as per Tridosha theory, his Vata is decreasing, right? So you have to explain in modern terms what is actually causing the change. So I'll show some studies, right? First is you understand how an Ayurveda Prakriti originates, right? So this is from IGIB study. They have mapped all the phenotypic features. And then from this, when you ask Prashna to the patient, you ascribe a particular dosha, right? If my skin is dry, you ascribe Vata, right? If my hunger is too high, you ascribe pitta. So this is what we call in modern terms a phenotypic feature. But how does this phenotypic feature originate, right? So we have DNA and we have epigenome. Genome, epigenome. So epigenome consists of what? DNA methylation, RNA, right? Which takes the signals from the DNA and transcribes into messages. Okay? Then that causes production of proteins. Proteins will lead to certain metabolites. And finally you see a dry skin. Okay? So Ayurveda starts from here, the phenotype, and then we try to go back. Modern science starts from the genes and then tries to come back. So at some point actually these two are the same, right? You're actually looking at different facets of the same expression. So there are a lot of studies that are being done to merge these two fields, right? If you say dry skin phenotype, what are the genes involved which makes a person's skin dry? And once we understand these genes and expressions, I strongly believe that we will have a quantifiable understanding for Vata, Pitta, Kapha. It may take time, but I strongly believe that you can measure it. So there's an initial study that is done, right? Understanding what blood markers differ in different Ayurveda extreme prakritis. So you can see if your Vata, Pitta have increased, they have to express somewhere in the blood, right? If they are not expressed, you cannot measure it, right? Blood, pulse, whatever you call it, right? Different aspects. So here you can see that if the red means it is high, okay? So just look at, let's say VLDL, okay? So if it is red, right? If it is black means you have high significance, okay? So you can see that some parameters, right? Like LDL, okay? LDL is increased in Pitta and decreased in Vata. Okay? So HDL is increased in Vata, decreased in Pitta. Same thing with CGPT, SGPT. So in fact, Dr. Acharya was talking yesterday that they've actually done mapping of blood markers for a lot of healthy individuals, and now the idea is to correlate and their prakriti is taken, right? So you can actually assign for each blood marker a certain weightage, and once you have a lot of blood markers, just by measuring blood markers, you should be able to assess the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, quantifiable. So that's what he was talking about yesterday. I think this is, since you also have a lot of patients, right, in the hospital, you can actually do data analysis. A person with Vata aggravation, what are the blood markers you are constantly seeing they are increasing. Again, there is new field called gut microbiome, right, which has been talked about very extensively, and lot of diseases either originate in the gut or they influence in the gut. So just 2 days back I saw a publication from Harvard which talks about Parkinson's disease. It's a disease of which organ? Which organ? Brain, right? So they have found out that even before brain, it's actually your gut that actually causes dysbiosis. So the misfolding of certain proteins first happen in the gut and then they travel to the brain. So there was a study that was published from Harvard to show that you can actually understand the changes that are happening in the gut much earlier than the person becomes, it manifests in the brain. So you can see that different prakriti people have slightly different expression of gut microbiome. Okay. Now you can understand that a Vata person may have certain, not everything, certain bacteria which could be different. And does it cause physiological effects? We don't know. This is ripe for investigation. How many of you learned Nadi Pariksha? Pulse diagnosis. All of you learn. So how does just putting 3 fingers at my radial pulse tell information about my whole body? Only one part of the body you're looking, right? So when we look at modern medicine, if you want to look at brain, you do MRI. If you want to look at gut, right, you do endoscopy, right? If you want to look at your bones, you do an X-ray, CT scan. So how can an Ayurveda doctor like a superman or woman can look at just 3 places and tell everything about the health. Okay. I give a heuristic explanation. You can go and figure it out. Right? So if you look at cardiovascular system, it's a closed loop system. We call in engineering it's a closed loop. That means the blood that is propagating from one part of the body, which is heart, right? It comes back. So you see this branchial points, right? There are various points where the arteries branch, okay? And the branching points create something called back reflections, okay? Second thing is the arteries, right? They are the ones which branch out to arterioles and capillaries and supply blood to a particular organ. If any of the organs are affected, there is a local change in the blood supply. So that local change in the blood supply causes a back reflection. Okay, this is my theory. Maybe right, maybe wrong. And second is there could also be something called an arterial stiffening at the aorta. So information that is there all over your body, it actually propagates because of the back reflections. So that means you can actually look at pulse anywhere in the body. And ideally you should be able to tell everything about the body. But the back reflections are very minute. That's why you need a trained Ayurveda doctor to see these small changes in your pulse and ascribe what is the dosha imbalance. That's why you palpitate to multiple levels. It's not just single level, right? So there's actually in AI we call small signal extraction, right? And the challenge is these signals get affected significantly with short-term influences. For example, yesterday if you have not slept well, an Ayurveda doctor can look at it and tell, oh, you have not slept well. So the trick is to delineate the short-term influences with long-term influences. If you don't eat food for 6 hours, your pulse will change. Can you say that, right? Let's say they don't, the doctor doesn't know anything about you and then close eyes and then look at the pulse, right? Pulse will change. The question is it changed because you didn't eat that day for 6 hours or is it because you have some disease? So this confounding factors needs to be filtered out before an AI can tell whether you have disease or not. So it's very important. A lot of data is needed. So there are a lot of studies being done. In fact, one of our colleagues from IIT Madras, they're actually doing whole arterial system modeling to see how changes in a particular arteries will change the pulse shapes everywhere, right? So this should be a good problem to look at, explaining pulse diagnosis in modern science. Right, so I have 15-20 minutes, so let me skim through where AI can play a picture. So hope I have given you the foundation why AI is needed. Okay? So there are a lot of areas, right? Whether it is drug discovery, whether it is diagnostics, whether it is therapeutics, all these areas AI can play a significant role, and I'll give you some examples. So we started, our company is called AI. So we strongly believe that you need to have an objective measures for whatever we do. So that's why we're in the process of training a lot of data. Okay? So what we do is we do a first level of Prakriti prediction, right, from something called a machine learning. So the way this works, yesterday you got a good understanding of what machine learning is. So the input features is the questions that an Ayurveda doctor asks the patient. Okay, and then we have a digital version. They'll give an answer. Then what we do is once you get the answers, and we also ask an Ayurveda doctor to give the reference label. That is very important in Ayurveda. The doctor has to tell whether a person is Vata Prakriti or a Pitta Prakriti or a Kapha Prakriti or a combination, right? So that reference label is used as an output. So the input is the features, all the features, physiological, anatomical, physical, psychological, and the output is prediction of the Prakriti. Okay? So you can see that when you use an AI, it can tell your Prakriti objectively. Now we have got close to, this is a little bit older study. Now the recent SRM study that we have 95% accuracy in Prakriti prediction from a small data, 500 subjects data. We need a lot more data to scale it because we have to take confounding factors, etc. But it will give an objective measure. Whether it is absolutely correct or not, only Ayurveda doctor can determine. But at least it gives a first level of decision so that when an Ayurveda doctor meets the patient, they can look at it and they can correct it. Second is, Vikriti, right? So we actually constructed a 6,000 diseases and 10,000 symptoms network. We call this a graph network. Okay. So the way it works is you can actually ask symptoms. You can answer what symptoms that you have. And the idea of this AI network is to give a first level decision in terms of what are the possible diseases that a patient may have. It will give disease 1 probability 80%, disease 2 probability 60%. So when a patient meets a doctor, the doctor has at least a first level of understanding what could be wrong. So in addition to that, right, they also do a pulse. So we have developed an application where you can actually use a smartphone. You can just put your finger under the camera. We record the blood pulsations. So you get a blood pulse. And then we use something called a deep learning network to predict what is the dosha imbalance from your pulse. Of course, this requires a lot of data. We are constantly training, so we'll be happy to get any of the feedback. So combining symptoms information and the pulse information, you can get first level understanding of your Vikriti. So if any of you are interested in learning how AI is applied, you can go to the app website. It's also available in Google Play. Called iwell.in is the website. App.iwell.in is the link to the app. It's available in a web version also. Please feel free to download, check your Prakriti, see if it is matching with your understanding. If it is matching, tell us. If it's not matching, also tell us. Okay? All right. So please take this information. We'll be glad to have feedback from a lot of Ayurveda doctors. Which pathways and how they affect the bioavailability of everything else. So for this, right, you need to understand the modern way of how drugs are discovered. So there are a lot of AI tools that are used in discovering drugs, drug target interaction, drug-drug interaction, drug small molecule interactions. So now Google has released the protein structure of pretty much all the known proteins. So you know where your Ayurveda small molecule has to bind to, right? Once you bind to a protein, that's when you affect. So this is a framework for understanding Ayurveda drugs. So basically you can have cell lines, right, treated with Ayurveda drugs, and you look at when you treat a cell line with an Ayurveda drug, which of the signatures, we call it transcriptome signatures, are changing. Once you understand which transcriptome signatures are changing, you can not only understand drug-drug interactions, you can also discover new, we call it drug repurposing, new uses of the drug. Right? I give a simple example. During COVID time, right? COVID is not described in Ayurveda text, but a lot of Ayurveda doctors have successfully managed COVID patients. Okay? So this is one of the studies published, right, which shows that a herb called Cisampulus pereira has SARS-CoV-2 properties. That means the small molecule can potentially bind to, right, the structures that are present on the surface of this virus. So once you understand this, then your Ayurveda drugs can be repurposed for new diseases. So this, I'll go through quickly. Linking gut microbiome with the personalized dietary recommendations. So if you have certain Agni, right, and Koshta parameters, you can see this is Tikshna Agni. And there are studies which show that if you have Tikshna Agni, you are dominated by bacteroids. And if you have this Tikshna Agni, there are certain foods that are recommended. Now, how is it useful? So we also do gut microbiome tests, right? So when we do gut microbiome test, then you can map Tikshna, even if you don't have any Ayurveda parameters. If someone is bacteroids dominated, then you can say that potentially they have Tikshna Agni. And once you map it to the Ayurveda parameters, then all the food recommendations can be followed. Right? So you can see what kind of foods they should eat, moderate protein and fat, right? Avoid spicy foods, right, if you have Tikshna Agni, because you're hyper at work. Same thing for Vishma Agni, right? Irregular digestion, right? Certain high fiber foods are recommended. So you can actually take the modern gut microbiome parameters, map it to the Ayurveda parameters and give personalized recommendations. Same thing with Mandagni, right? If you are Mandagni, you have to take spices and herbs to regenerate your digestive parameters. So there's another app called iPrameha. Yesterday also I was talking to the doctor. You use this application was made for our clinical study. The goal is, see, we typically treat, when we treat diabetes, we're actually treating high sugar level. But high sugar level is only a cause of something more fundamental, right? So when we manage diabetes, we are always trying to reduce the sugar level. But the question is, why did we get high sugar level? It's not that we have started eating more sugar. It's the same sugar that we have been eating, right, since we were adults. In fact, my daughter eats 2-3 chocolates every day and she doesn't have diabetes. So it's not the high sugar that is the problem, right? It's your body's ability to produce insulin, right, which can take that sugar and put it in the cells is the problem. Now the question is, why does insulin resistance happen? Actually, insulin resistance happens 5 years before you get actually high sugar level. Does anybody know why insulin resistance happens? It's described in Ayurveda, in Charaka Samhita. He didn't say insulin resistance, he talked about, right, why you will get prameha. If you eat lot of kapha foods, in fact you can go and read that shloka, right? If you eat lot of kapha foods, if you are lazy, all the causative factors for diabetes are described. Okay? So the question is, how can we cure diabetes fundamentally, not just reducing the sugar level? Can you reduce the reduce the insulin resistance and improve the fat metabolism in the body so that you don't have to keep taking drugs forever for your life, and then after some time you get resistance, then you take insulin injections and that also doesn't work. After some time your body becomes highly resistant. So the metrics are that once you get diabetes, this is from Dr. Mohan, one of the world's renowned diabetologists in the whole world. He was telling that when diabetes patients come to this hospital, they give very personalized, right, drugs, insulin, etc. Only 30% of the patients have controlled diabetes. That means, irrespective of you giving so many oral hypoglycemics and giving insulin injections, only 1/3 of the patients you are able to maintain even sugar level, HbA1c below 7%. That's a sad story if you ask me, right? We are spending billions of dollars and all we can do is 1/3 of the people we can actually control, only sugar level. Then you stop giving the medicines, they go back. I think the perspective needs to change, and I strongly feel that Ayurveda has excellent understanding and perspectives in terms of curing metabolic disorders at a fundamental level. So it's not just giving medicines, right? It's, so when we look at it, we actually pay a lot of attention to diet. We pay a lot of attention to yoga and meditation because that's a way to stimulate your pancreatic islet cells to produce more insulin, reduce the fat metabolism. It's actually the visceral fat that causes insulin resistance, right? There are a lot of yogasanas that are prescribed in Ayurveda which can potentially, right, reduce your insulin resistance. So we're not looking at it holistically. We're only looking at give medicines and get better, right? So that needs to change. So that's what we are looking at, and providing clear clinical markers. So we in fact use something called a continuous glucose monitor to show, after giving suggestions on a daily basis, how their sugar spikes are improving. It's not fasting sugar level. Yes, fasting sugar level is important, but how did you get so high fasting sugar level in the first place? Because of the food that you eat, it causes sugar spikes, and that sugar spikes stay along, right? Then they glycate the hemoglobin. Okay, so last 2 minutes. So we're also making a lot of devices to make Ayurveda more evidence-based. This is the kiosk. The kiosk will have not just the software, a lot of hardware. So it will have physiological sensors, right? It will also ask questions. We are integrating something called a body composition analysis. We are doing a pilot in a railway station in Andhra. We're getting to get some good feedback from the customers. We plan to scale it to 30 plus railway stations in the next 1 year. So this is how the kiosk looks. So again, same software as I've shown, but added with certain sensors, right, to get more information. So there are a lot of pictures that we are taking to understand the phenotypic parameters. Of course, this needs a lot of training, need a lot of data, and once they do the assessment, right, there are questions asked to understand the phenotypic features. Then once we ask the questions, then we also look at the Vikriti. So they are also suggested some tests to get, right, more markers. You can see we have integrated a 3D imager. It will capture your 3D picture of your face. And right now we are in the process of training a lot of algorithms to see, right, how we can map to Ayurveda phenotypic features, right? In Ayurveda is described, right, broad face, broad shoulders, highly smooth skin, textured skin, all these parameters, right, we plan to grab. And I also mentioned that we are collecting a lot of pulses, right? So there are two sensors we are integrating. One is the ECG and there is the PPG, so that you can get your cardiac signal and also cardiovascular signal. Then personalized recommendations. Right? So there's a lot of potential for AI in Ayurveda herbs because you want to improve the productivity and the yield, right? So you can collect a lot of data using IoT sensors and improve the yield. And drug standardization is very important. Yesterday there was a question about DNA fingerprinting, right? You can actually do DNA fingerprinting for the herbal plants also, right? To understand the authenticity of that. Ashwagandha grown in Tamil Nadu will be different than ashwagandha grown in Himachal Pradesh. Can we understand what is the source? And standardization, lot of drugs, right? We don't know if it has, compounds that we don't desire, right? If it is adulterated, we need to know. We need to know what are the different compounds present in each herb, a drug. And now that you have a lot of devices, you can collect a lot of markers. Okay, so I'll just take the last slide to talk to you about a center that we have established in collaboration with Ministry. It's the first of its kind center funded by Ministry of Ayush. You are welcome to visit. So this we have established 2 years back in IIT Jodhpur. The goal is to have engineers, Ayurveda doctors and modern doctors work together to understand Ayurveda in a modern perspective and give integrative clinical recommendations. Okay. So here we are focused on metabolic disorders in partnership with AIIMS Jodhpur and Ayurveda University. So all of them combined, you can see that we are establishing a lot of frameworks. So once you have this data, right, we also discuss with Secretary Kotecha sir, because a lot of data is collected in Ayurveda hospitals. So this is actually big data. Once you have this big data, can we actually give recommendations, health and wellness recommendations at a population level, okay, which is going to be very useful so that you prevent disorders, diseases before they actually happen. Okay, as I'm a professor, so I always give a homework at the end of the lecture. So this is homework for all of you youngsters. Take top 5 Ayurveda drugs, identify the bioactives and mechanism of action. Right? You can take ginger, ashwagandha, you can take turmeric. Right? If you can do this for top 5 Ayurveda drugs, the understanding will improve. I also talked about, right, why a formulation is better than a single herb. Does it do pathway balancing? Does it do improve the bioavailability? What is the synergistic effects? Reduce the side effects? And last but not the least, right, the definition of health, right, we talked about. How can we quantify using biomarkers, right? Biomarkers that is digital or blood biomarkers. So with that, I finished on time. Thanks for your attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if anybody wants internships, write to me, right? I'll be happy to take good interns. And you can work with our team. This is my address, balapesala@ai.io or balapesala@gmail.com. You can go to our website, you can write to me. Okay, any questions?
Hello. Could be a close proximity. My name is Dr. Rama Prasad. I wish you were my thought teacher while I was a student in 1980s. So it took a long time before I fall into this or got into this way of thinking. Couple of quick observations. Ayurvedic phenotyping has got big problems. It's misleading and in many places are completely outrightly wrong. There is a reason for it. Okay, that's one thing. If you put body in between Prakriti and Vikriti, you get more clarity. Otherwise, there's a lot of problem within your Prakriti. What I see is the body built based on Prakriti. What I see is your body, which is built based on your Prakriti. Once we get this distinction, your view should improve. I'm just...
Yeah, so I think, good point. So when we look at Prakriti, right? So we look at what is described in Ayurveda. There are 4 kinds of features described in Ayurveda. Anatomical features, physical features, physiological features and psychological. So to assess the Prakriti, we need to consider all these features.
Yeah, many of them are wrong, that's what I'm saying.
Well, so see, the features are not wrong. Our way of measuring and interpreting may be wrong. And that's up for discussion.
Yeah.
So we have Ayurveda doctors here. I think we should have a different session in understanding and measuring this parameter.
What I'm saying is, generally, when you go through any part of it, there are misleading information.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was talking to Dr. Prasanna Kulkarni was in my car, and we were talking about this. Is it easy to hear? Is it echoing? No? Yes? Okay. Okay, I'll tell you one reason, one factor. Kapha people are superior, Vata people are inferior. Textbook says that. Textbook, okay.
We don't use such kind of...
Fantastic. So you are editing it, that's fantastic. That's good. Okay, so if you can put that little element, body into this, it's a different story, because I was struggling with the concept of Prakriti and Vikriti, and my understanding, my current conclusion is this: if you connect, if you predict Vikriti based on, Vikriti based on Prakriti, Ayurvedic foundation collapses. So you can't really say, Vata types can develop Vata disorders easier. That's not the concept at all. Anyway, these are the couple of things I want to just start with.
Sure.
Thank you
For the observation.